Moving on to our second headliner this morning, we have Accenture's Global Industry Senior Managing Director for their Life Sciences business, and also a global client lead covering the topic of data and intelligence, which is the cornerstone of next-generation life sciences. And to explain in further, please welcome on stage Anne O'Riordan, the Senior Managing Director from Accenture Life Sciences.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you and good morning. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I had the pleasure of being here all day yesterday. I want to talk to you particularly about how data and intelligence could affect the life sciences industry, predominantly pharmaceutical medical products, and their role in the broader healthcare environment. Now, if we trace back yesterday to the journey we all went through yesterday, starting the day with Patrice Machaba, who laid out a challenge to all of us in the room to really look at reimagining healthcare, to collaborating better. And when you think about that, the underpinnings of that are all predicated on data exchange, intelligence, and cooperation. As we went through yesterday, we saw complete evidence of an industry groundswell in this area. So we heard from Bertrand Batson, as you guys know, and he walked through very specific examples in Novartis, them actually mining 1.5 million of their compounds data in their archives, looking at, to better bring, from a targeting perspective. He also talked about, from a drug discovery perspective, mining the 2 million patient years of data that they had in clinical trials, and the 100,000 interactions they were doing with doctors on a daily basis. You match that then as we went along with when we're hearing from the FDA, when we're hearing from the European Commission, all about trying to get data standards and putting an effort in so that we can collaborate. You looked at Roche's strategy, and you looked at how Steve Guys talked about meaningful data and doing analytics on meaningful data, bringing diagnostics and bringing pharmaceuticals together so that they could actually bring better products to the market faster for patients. And as we then walked through the afternoon and we heard from a plethora of different startups and technology experts on things like applying AI to very specific use cases in R&D, to very specific cases around interaction with patients, you can see that, as I said, there's a groundswell here. There's a level of activity that is causing the beginnings of a fairly significant change for our industry. So I'm going to give you some more examples. I'm going to actually just walk you through also what that could possibly mean for particularly pharmaceutical and medical products companies and how they could evolve over time. I will be drawing analogies from other industries so you can see what happened to other industries and what could potentially happen to us in this time frame. So a lot of people say to us that it's very difficult to change our industry because it's so regulated. I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the fact that the FDA did actually approve its first digital pill a year ago. This pill, I think if you're not familiar with it, it actually is activated. It's got a digital outside to Ambilify, which has been on the market for a while for schizophrenia. As soon as it hits the stomach acid, it gives out a signal. The signal updates a patch on your arm, which updates the application, and you know that the person has actually consumed the drug. It's a compliance activity, but compliance for schizophrenia is highly important. And this is a first step. It's one piece of data. It's not the only piece of data you need when treating this disease, but it's one piece of data in the continuum. We heard from Empatica yesterday, being the first wearable smartwatch that got FDA approval back in February. Those of you who saw the iPhone 4's announcement yesterday, it has an electrocardiogram graph on it, and it has an ability to detect falls. So they were quite clear about a year ago that they were going for patents that would allow the actual the watch to be a medical device. If you look at how people are applying blockchain, there's two main applications for blockchain. And again, just remember, blockchain is just how do we take data from one place to another and control it as it goes along. It obviously started with our friends in financial services. They have much more important data to be moving around, apparently. But when you come down to the fundamentals of health and wealth, health is the next logical place. So it's used for digital clinical trials, it's used in supply chain, for counterfeiting, etc. We are using it to augment the industry that we have today. It has many more powerful applications in how the industry will evolve. This is another service that came on the market earlier this year in San Francisco, where they're using drones to do delivery of your product to you. So again, combine, for example, something like the Empatica smartwatch, where it gives an indication that you're about to have an epileptic attack, with a capability to send a signal to get a drone to bring you your medicine when you need it. It completely changes the life of the patient. The patient can now actually have a job, they can go to work, they can go to school, which is really not on the cards for a lot of people who suffer from major epileptic attacks at the moment. Again, it's just data in the background. Yes, it's a drone, but really what's happening is I know when to get something to whom at what time. I bet everybody in the audience has some form of this. When I went to buy one of these 2 years ago, the guy said, "What do you want out of a watch?" And I said, "I'd like it to tell the time." And he said, "Well, that's good, we can do that." He said, "I think we can do a bit more." And it wasn't until I realized how much of my life is now dependent on it telling me when to stand up, when to drink water, what my heart rate is when I'm on the side of a mountain. You realize that this becomes an intrinsic part of managing your own health. Completely different activity than in the past. This one I always find amusing. This one is actually a sensor, a tattoo that can go on your teeth. Again, interesting sometimes by themselves, but more interesting when you put them together for a diabetic, for example. And it starts monitoring the sugar levels that are going into your body. You combine that with other sensors, and you actually have a feedback loop on how you can manage your own health. You put that into a broader population, and now you can actually detect, what all of us think about in the long term is that the amount of sugared products that are out there in the market are probably killing us. But we need data to actually prove that. It won't take us long. There's lots of detection, wearable detection items out there at the moment. The one in the middle is a very, very soft fabric, actually. We run a health tech challenge every year in Accenture, where we invite startups to come to solve some of the problems for our clients. This one won last year. It has 56 sensors in a piece of clothing that almost feels like a Nike shirt. Very easy to wear, but and can go with you as you're moving. Again, you just combine that from a data set perspective. You're pulling the data out of that, and you're helping to treat a patient in a different way. In 11.03, Apple already put the EMR records on. Somebody was talking yesterday at length about having to share electronic medical records and the difficulty of that. The tech companies are going to figure this out. We've got a talk later on this afternoon at 4 o'clock or so from a person from CB Insights about how big tech is coming into the healthcare space. I think they have a better shot of solving this one than a lot of individual activity from the bottom up. So what's going on? So if I look at waves of technology change, and we go all the way back to the 1950s, you look at very slow curves of change in mainframe and client server and Web 1.0. And that red curve, I know you can't read the little dot on it, but there's a 1994 dot on there for the beginning of Amazon. Now, when Amazon started, they didn't actually start off to be what they are today at all. They started off, for those of you who remember, they started off selling books online. They wanted to compete with Barnes & Noble. That was it. But when they found out, and they applied a tiny bit of intelligence to the fact that you bought one book, and you bought a book, and we decided to tell you that he bought that book as well, and vice versa, because you might be interested. And that was about as far as it went for quite a while. Then they noticed that both of you were buying books for children under the age of 6, and they said, well, maybe they want to buy toys. And they put toys into the mix, and other products into the mix. As you bought other products, they realized you needed special delivery, so they put Amazon Prime in to get you to you when you needed it. Now, what were they doing? They were just learning all the time. They were mining your data and just learning what you need. The consequence of what they did is that Toys R Us was out of business this year. Chapter 11, done. Now that's what I'm talking about in business model change. So we can talk all we like about all the different and very cool things that are happening, but ultimately what is actually happening is the pace of change that has gone on because of big data, because of IoT and smart devices, because of artificial intelligence, and will be even more augmented as we go forward with quantum computing. It is accelerating the pace of change significantly. So I'm really, really, really encouraged with what we saw yesterday. Everybody's trying to solve the problem. Everybody's trying to get in on what can we do with data and intelligence to actually change some of the fundamental issues that we know have always existed in our healthcare industry. If you talk to what Kaveh, my friend and colleague, talked about yesterday with a triangle of access, affordability, and effectiveness. And his point at the end of his talk was that he felt that we might be just now at the brink of actually being able to move those three parts of that triangle. A triangle he defined as an iron triangle up to this, immovable. If you wanted to give in on any one side of it, something else had to suffer. This is a way of actually transforming organizations and transforming capabilities. It has already transformed the retail industry. It has already transformed the way we live our lives. So, what is going to happen to us from a healthcare perspective, to patients? So, I'm very quickly going to try and pull all this together, which is a lot of the things I've talked about, whether you're talking about genomic technologies or CAR-T, you're talking about 3D printing, manufacturing, IoT, you're talking about blockchain transferring data between one source and another, either through digital clinical trials or in your supply chain. You look at the automated delivery that I talked about again, you're just pushing data around this circle. All these pervasive sensors are gathering data, whether they're doing health monitoring, whether they're smart tattoos, whether they're digestible sensors. It's data that we're gathering. So fundamentally, it's all about what can we do with this data, genomic data, behavioral data, lifestyle data, nutritional data. And there are challenges. We've talked, again, quite at length about challenges, and we will talk more today about other challenges with getting this data to talk to one another. But there are so many companies working on it right now, and the speed at which they can make change happen, there will be more rapid change than we've seen in the past. When you put an analytics on that data, and even if it's visualization, but if you get beyond visualization to what we call prescriptive or predictive, and obviously ultimately into the area of cognitive analytics, you are moving the needle with respect to how you can increase the rapidity of bringing drugs to market and finding solutions for patients. It really is when you bring data, analytics, artificial intelligence, and that faster, cheaper, connected computing power together. They are the core underpinning elements of changing business models. So if I look very simply at product companies as they have been forever, traditional companies in point A, they are enhancing their product even as we speak with digital capabilities. They're putting even web pages, apps, but also IoT devices around the product to give a different experience. You're going to move into a world where there will be much more of a platform allowing people to interact in different ways. There's plenty of companies doing this. If you look at a company called iCarbonX, which is based in Shenzhen in China, they are putting together several different companies in a platform who will exchange data. Google has a concept of putting in an airlock environment, so you can bring your data into that environment, you can share it as you wish, and you can pull it back. Tencent has bought up so many companies, and I'll show you that in a minute, to actually put in some platform capabilities to integrate services that are sitting around and sitting around the patient. But the last one up there, if you look at living services, these are services, and that concept of living service, it's just adaptable to you, to how you live your life, to how the ecosystem needs to operate. The conventional wisdom at the moment is that the change is not going to come this way. It's going to come from the big technology companies coming the other way. So they're going to start at D, and they're going to work backwards. And they're the ones that are going to put the platforms out there for us to interchange on, and they are going to change the game with respect to how core life sciences companies have operated in the past. So if you look at a classic linear business model, all the way from research through clinical, you make the product in supply chain and then you commercialize it. The hypothesis is that over time, we will get to a much more virtual circle. With data underpinning all of this and patients at the middle, the hypothesis is, and I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but it should happen. It is possible that this will happen over time. You will have self-disruption in R&D. Some companies like Gilead are already doing it. They don't wait for the patent to actually expire. They actually allow themselves, if they've got a better product, they'll bring it out on the market. But as you continuously learn, you can continuously develop, and as development timelines and the intelligence around development speeds up, which is what one of the things that Steve Guys called for yesterday, the hypothesis you're going to see a much more virtual circle in the pharmaceutical world. And it will change how the pharmaceutical world plays with the rest of the industry, for the physicians, the government, the payers. Now, the question is this really happening? Because a lot of people go, yeah, it all sounds nice, but we've been so linear for so long, I can't imagine us moving to that model quickly. What you look for is indicators, right? So what are the kind of indicators that are happening out there? So if you look back to 2010 and the investment pools that were been going into to health tech, you'll see this dramatic increase. Up to 2017, there was $11 billion poured into health tech. And already this year, we've seen $6 billion. So this will continue to evolve. You also have the mega mergers. So Amazon now, with its acquisition of PillPack, will know all the drugs that are going to any one person on any day of the week. So if you're taking a whole set of drugs, they know exactly what you're taking when you're taking it, because they've delivered it to you, right? And they know what you eat on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and what times of the day because of the PillPack. So from a patient knowledge perspective, they understand the patient. Now, as you move on, they combine that with some IoT, they'll combine that with some data potentially from different devices, and suddenly they will begin to understand the patient experience, much as they begin to understand why the two of you bought books for children under the age of 6. And they can respond to that accordingly. It will change the business model, there is no question about that. What is going to happen over time, don't know. What they're doing in the background with Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan to relook at insurance and how that operates, you can see, I can only hypothesize over time, these two events coming together and they fundamentally changing the front end of patients and patient experience and how they're reimbursed. You look at the amount of collaborations that are going on with Verily at the moment. You look at every single one of the major pharmaceutical companies are doing something with Verily, which is the digital, the healthcare arm of Alphabet, which is Google's company. If I live in China, I live in Hong Kong, I've lived in China for the last 11 years, and I look at the amount of acquisitions that Tencent are doing in this area, all of them, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, all of them are getting into this particular space quite dramatically. Tencent just did an investment in Babylon Health from the UK, and that is going to give 1 billion people virtual doctor access. They've already bought WeDoctor or Haoisha in China. I talked about iCarbonX earlier. It is a very new type of business model. The guy who actually started iCarbonX spent years looking at genomic data and realized that he couldn't get to the final answer just looking at genomic data sets. So actually he's now putting together a platform-based company which pulls in many different types of data sets, and he's looking at data from nutritional recommendations, skincare, to behavioral data, to genetic analysis, to get a full view of the patient and how they live their lives. And he's using that to actually offer better healthcare and life insurance. So it's a new type of platform for the industry. And we see plenty of new different partnerships. Probably one of the more interesting ones recently is Ali Health and Merck in China launching a platform to actually give better services to patients in China. So I hear I've got 11 seconds, and I think my final points that I will leave you with is that at the moment, at this point in time, digital technology is the catalyst. You know, you've got AI, you've got IoT, you've got cloud, but the reality is data is in the driving seat. And that is what will fundamentally drive. Now, again, it won't happen today or tomorrow, but it will happen more quickly than we would expect. And that's it from me. This is a book I wrote 2 years ago called Healthcare Disrupted, on the changing business models in the industry. I actually have a compulsion now to feel that I need to update the content because things are changing so fast that we're going to have to move on in this area. But if there are questions, I'd be happy to take some.
Just running up. Oh, I tell you, it keeps you fit. I should have one of those. Anyone got one of those stepometers? No? Yeah? No? AI people? No? Healthcare? Okay.
I think we have a question over here.
Okay, I was just wondering if you're putting your hand up saying you're a stepometer. And thank you so much for that presentation. We've got one question there, but of course, wave your hands if you'd like to ask Anne a question in the next few minutes or so, and we'll get another microphone to you too. Hi there.
Hi, Jonathan Shapiro from the UK. Two major alarm bells ringing in my head. One is the intrusion on privacy, and the second is the rise of the enormous corporation that then dominates the market and can adjust the prices to our disadvantage.
Yes, absolutely. Data privacy is the one nut that everybody worries about. I think look to our financial services brethren. They are going to crack that one faster than we will, and we will ride the coattails of that, but they, for definite, with blockchain, with anonymization, I have no doubt, with the amount of people globally that are working on this, I have no doubt that we will have a solution to that very soon. If you saw the announcement by Apple yesterday, their announcement was very clear. He finished his whole announcement saying, they believe in Apple, that you own your own data. Who you decide to share it with is your business. We did a survey 2 years ago of 10,000 patients across the globe in different countries. And those 69% of those with chronic diseases said that they would share their data willingly if it helped them to get a better cure or be able to live with their diseases better. So I think data is going to become a personal choice, no question about it, but the ability to share it in a safe manner will be solved within the next couple of years.
Anne, if I can, what is the solution that you're working on then?
Now, the solutions are multiple. So blockchain does help from the perspective because it securely moves data. There's anonymization capabilities in almost every platform that is coming out at the moment. So it is possibly some combination of anonymization plus a blockchain will basically be able to control the movement of data. But as I said, once they figure it out for all those dollars going around in the financial services industry, they'll solve it for us too.
So is there a timeline for this, for you in Accenture, for you to say, okay, this is what we're going to dedicate our...
There is not a timeline. As I said, if you saw the graph we showed earlier, we believe that everything is just operating faster than it had in the past. So
it's a bit scary.
It's scary, and I'm very positive at the same time, I think.
Yeah, it's scary though, I suppose, if you're thinking, or you've got alarm bells about what the next...
But I think most of the big companies are going to take the Apple high road, which is your data, your choices.
Okay.
And if you decide to share it, you decide to share it.
Does that satisfy your
What was the
Initial
second?
concerns? I don't know if we've still got a microphone on you there.
Sorry. I think there's unintended consequences. That it's
Absolutely.
one thing to say, I give this data to the person looking after me, it's what they're going to do with it after that.
Yes.
But the other side of the coin was the emergence, particularly of Amazon, dominating the market and telling us what we want rather than responding to what we really want and
Yeah.
charging prices it wants.
Yeah.
Yes, and that will be very interesting as to who the competitor sets will be allowed and whether the monopoly commissions will even allow something like that to happen, quite frankly. But those who own the platform, that's what happened in retail. Those who own the platform own the market eventually. That becomes, I mean, in my head is always this visualization of, you know, Fifth Avenue in New York, where everybody wanted to have the store and you would pay enormous amounts of money to have the retail outlet on Fifth Avenue. That has just gone into the cloud. And it's whoever owns that cloud. It happens all the time in China. You have to be on Alibaba's cloud if you want to sell anything.
Okay. Thank you so much for your question, and thank you so much for taking time to be with us. We've run out of time, but if you'd like to ask Anne a question, I presume you're here for the rest of the day.
I am.
Wonderful. So do approach Anne and share in the conversation as well. Anna Reardon, thank you very much. Thank you. Can we scrub that for you?